Hello, hello. Oh, I'm already good over here. Hello, everybody. Hello, Sylvia. Good to see you. And Miss Christy, hello. Welcome to this Wednesday night Bible study here at Faith Baptist Church's Facebook Live and YouTube Live. This is not the right size on Facebook. There we go. Ought to be good. It is as good as it's going to get on YouTube. Okay. Hope you're all having a fantastic week so far. I, as you can see, have had a little bit of a wild week. But the Lord has been good. Hope He's been good for you guys as well. Do be in prayer for one another. Do be in prayer for, it's the Kaiser family, Brooke and Bonnie.
Yes.
Who had a house in Florida. Thankfully to the Lord, they're okay. But their house has been completely flooded. I think everything's been destroyed.
Brooke lost everything.
They've lost everything. So be in prayer for them and all the residents of Florida who I'm sure are going through it. I haven't seen the death toll in a few days, but the last time I saw it was 100. So do be in prayer for the people in Florida. I believe I haven't heard much more from that, although we did have some activity on the GroupMe. I believe it was somewhere recently. Be in prayer for, I haven't heard much on Laszlo's recovery and his situation with his gallbladder, but do continue to be in prayer for him. As I look for the GroupMe app, there it is. Yeah, that is everything I have, except Miss Christie asked us to be in prayer for the family of the freshman boy that went to Springtown High School and took his own life in the most tragic form of loss there could possibly be. The most unnatural way, the most unnatural thing to lose is a person of that age, and it's an awful loss. But even more so when it comes in the form of this. So distraught and so disparaged that they see no other way out. So do be in prayer for those people sort of left behind in the wake of all of that. I'm looking through what I have written down here. I think that's all that I have.
Pray for your grandma. She's getting treatments for her
Yeah.
back to start working.
Continue to be in prayer for so do be in prayer for David Robinson and his eye, and he's trying to get that taken care of. So just be in prayer for him as sort of the vision is kind of fading,
Yes.
and they're looking into options. So be in prayer about that. I have written down here Vonnie and her biopsy. Do I have any information about that?
I don't know about that one.
Okay.
I need to
That
ask her.
that might be a miss. I might have written that down a mistake.
I think it's Bobby. I think it's
Bobby.
Bobby.
I do have Bobby Reynolds written down for her biopsy, yes, and the cancerous lump, and just be in prayer for that. I don't think we've had an update on that, so be in prayer for that. And yes, Amanda mentioned a second ago, be in prayer for my grandmother. She's gone in for some, she's supposed to be a consultation, but she went ahead and had them do some injections into her back, and she's said so far, I spoke to her yesterday, and as of yesterday she said that they were giving her some relief, that she was in less pain, and that they seemed to be working. So just pray for her health and her back, and that these injections do help her out in the long run, that sort of thing. And I do think that's all that I have for this evening as far as prayer requests go, but if you guys have something that you'd like for us to pray for, do be sure to leave a comment. I'm going to do my best to see those comments and read them out for everybody, and hopefully we'll be very efficient about that. And seriously, you guys pray for each other. It's the most important work we can do. is prayer. It is, Sylvia says, yes, it is cancerous, and that is an absolute tragedy. But hopefully they caught it early enough where they can still do something about it. And we, of course, regardless, put it in the hands of the Lord. So just be in prayer for her as she goes through all of this. I do want to, before we get started into our Bible study for the night, thank you so much, Amanda and Sylvia, for liking this stream, and to all those on YouTube who may have clicked that like button. And if you have the chance to, it's a free and easy way to support the church. And we very much appreciate it. And it's a way for you to show that you are proud of the Lord and of His Word, and when it is taught, to put your name in that group of people that say, I like what the Lord is doing in this ministry. So we appreciate that about you. So like I said, I don't have anything else. If you have something else, leave a comment, let me know. I'll let everybody else know. Even after we get started, don't worry about that. We will keep trying to move forward with it. So at this time, we will jump over to our Bible cam, our Bible study scene. And should just pop right up. It is not popping right up. Oh boy. Okay. It is set to automatic. I don't know why it's not registering that as the same website, but there we go.
Audio on Facebook.
Please tell me I have audio on Facebook. Surely somebody would have said something by now, right? Okay, let me know if the Bible needs to be a little bit bigger. As a matter of fact, I will go ahead and make it a little bit bigger for you guys. You guys on YouTube should be able to see everything fine. Facebook is being difficult tonight. I do not have audio on the Bible cam. Did I have audio? Did I have audio? Now y'all are in trouble.
What? I don't think Bruce likes you anymore.
Now,
Just saying.
okay. You guys watching on Facebook are in trouble. You get a timeout. Y'all let me ramble on. How long we been live now? I want the number. Where's the number? There's the number. I have been live for 16 minutes now. And you Facebook friends have let me ramble on without even being able to hear me for 16 minutes. So I guess if you want to know what I said for the first 16 minutes, you're going to have to go to Facebook. YouTube. You're going to have to go to the Red website and check them out and listen to that first 16 minutes, because that's where the prayer requests are. It's important. You should go check it out. I can't believe it has been a day of technical errors. Why did I'm fixing to switch over to the Bible cam for you guys on Facebook. I'm probably going to lose audio again because I have to reinstall it. Did I lose audio again? I did. Is this audio input here? It is. Why is it different? Is it muted? Hello? Why? It was... Okay, the input was there, but it had been changed. And muted. That's weird. Sylvia says, I'm on YouTube. I just like and shared Facebook. I super appreciate that, Sylvia. Thank you so much for the support on both platforms. If you liked on YouTube, your name's not going to pop up. If you want to let us know that you left a like, I will stop and say thanks. So long as I see your comment, which hopefully I do. But I think we're good now. We have audio. We can go ahead and jump into our Bible study now. Holy cow. Okay. So, we're continuing our series on the Hall of Faith. I am, for a minute, not going to be able to see comments. Because I have to do some adjusting. so that I can see the words. Okay. So we're in Hebrews 11. We're reading verse 29 this evening, which is our next story in the Hall of Faith. It says, by faith they passed through the Red Sea, that's Moses and the children of Israel, as by dry land, which the Egyptians, assaying to do, were drowned. So we all know the story of the Red Sea. The world over knows the story of the Red Sea. If you don't know the story of the Red Sea, we're going to read it, but this is Wednesday night, right? This is the Bible study, so we're trying to put it on a shelf where everybody gets something, right? So we'll put it on that bottom shelf for those new to the Bible can reach it. But we also know our crowd. We know that there's a lot of people watching this tonight and in the future that are able to reach those higher shelves, right? Able to dig a little deeper, hold their breath a little longer to get down there where we like to swim, right? So we're going to try to hit all those levels. And so in Exodus 14 is where we're going to spend the rest of our time at this evening. That is the story of the Red Sea. And it says in verse 1, the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, that they turn and encamp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the Red Sea, over against Baal-zephon. Before it shall ye encamp by the sea. So these names, they mean things. We don't have time to get into them tonight. Baal-zephon, the name Baal, is the name of a little g god, false god, that the people who live there probably named their town after. Migdol, Pi-hahiroth, all these names, they mean things, but for the sake of getting through this, we're going to not spend a whole lot of time on that. Maybe we should do a series on names and their importance. I heard a series one time in numbers. There's just lists of names, and you think, why on earth would they spend so much time on lists of names? Those names tell the story of the Bible. Like, the names in that list from beginning to end tell the story through the New Testament. And even get into some prophecy. It's an incredible thing. We might look into it someday. If it didn't absolutely bore everybody to tears, like I'm sure it would. But I find it so fascinating. Anyway. Let's see. So verse 3. They are hard to pronounce. You have to get into the etymology of those words and why those letters make the sounds that they do, the original languages, and that sort of thing, to really understand how they're pronounced. Some of them are still very hard to pronounce. But verse 3 says, for Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land, the wilderness has shut them in, and I, God says, I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that they shall follow after them. And I will be honored upon Pharaoh and upon all his host, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord. And they did so. So we're talking about the crossing of the Red Sea this evening. What do you mean the what? I said a lot of things. Oh, etymology? The etymology is the study of words and names and their origins and why they mean what they mean. Right? So you might say the Bible is the most fruitful source of etymology because we know all languages come from that place called Babel. Right? And it's a language we've lost, and it was split into 10 completely different languages that offshoot into all the different languages we have today. As a matter of fact, if you study languages at all, you know that there are around 10 less than or exactly 10 root languages that all languages come through. I don't think that's a coincidence, right? But I digress. So we see, first of all, is in the story of the Red Sea and the story of Moses and the children of Israel crossing the Red Sea and the fate of Pharaoh and of Egypt. After all we've been through with this Pharaoh as well, we've seen him come to power, and we've seen him make decisions about Israel, and we've seen this whole sort of situation fall into his lap. Moses return, a completely different man. We've seen his journey in discovering the truth of God in the 10 plagues, and all of this. He lost his firstborn son, and all of these things that we've been through, that he's been through, that we've witnessed through Scripture. And we come to his final moments here in the story of the crossing of the Red Sea, and it is a tragic one. But it is a testament to the Lord and the way that he is and who he is. And I think we're going to see that in this portion of Scripture today. So we're talking about unmovable hearts. And what we see firstly in these first 4 verses is the unmovable heart of Pharaoh. God says this is what Pharaoh is going to say. But then we see in verse 5, it said, "It was told of the king of Egypt that the people fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and of his servants was turned against the people of Israel. And they said, 'Why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us? Why did we give up all of our slaves? That was a stupid decision. We were emotional, we were sad, we didn't feel like having the argument, so we just said, fine, go.'" That's not at all what happened. But when we're upset, we have a tendency as human beings to twist the truth into something we can use to hate. Something we can use to point at somebody and make them the scapegoat. Now, if you don't know what a scapegoat is, it sounds like I just said a really funny word. Right? But the word scapegoat is an actual thing. It's used in conversation all the time. And it just means the sacrificial lamb, if you will. It's the thing that you put all your anger and all your frustration on, and you punish that thing for whatever else that you're mad at. A lot of times, if you know much about politics, sometimes I'll talk about the political scapegoat, somebody that they can point to and say, well, they're the ones that caused all these issues, so we got to get rid of them. Sort of a political scapegoat. Economics are really simple enough to point to one person and say it's all your fault, right? It's usually a large group of people making several series of bad decisions in order to get to where we get to. But we want a scapegoat. We want to point to one person and say, you did this. When they arrest drug kingpins and, criminal slumlords and all these kinds of things, we want to point to that one person and say they did all this, but usually there's a whole group of people working with them and for them that did that as well, right? So that's what a scapegoat is. And it's also emotionally, it's somebody who's not even guilty. When we're using an emotional scapegoat, we're yelling at somebody who didn't even do anything wrong, right? It's just somebody who happened to be in the room at the time when everything blew up. Right? So that's what Pharaoh is doing to Moses and to Israel. And they've sort of warped what really happened in their minds to make it so that they can justify the terrible things that they've done. Well, maybe I shouldn't have, but look at what they did. Well, what did they do? They were slaves, right? So you can see this warping taking place in their minds, and I'm trying not to get too distracted, but this is so prevalent to what we go through here in 2024. It's a frustrating time in which to live sometimes. Things are more expensive nowadays. The world can be a scary and confusing place. It's more expensive. The world is more complicated. We're not sure who's who or what's what, but we like to take our fears and our frustrations toward whatever we're going through personally sometimes and just take it out on somebody. And we have to be careful about that, because that is not how Christ would have his disciples to live their lives, right? And so we learn this lesson from Pharaoh. Don't do what he did here. So verse 6 said, he made ready his chariots and took his people with him. He took 600 chosen chariots and all the chariots of Egypt and captains over every one of them, the choicest warriors over all the land of Egypt, and filled those chariots with the best warriors he could find to go and slay these untrained slaves in the wilderness. Verse 8 says, the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. That's going to be an important phrase. We're going to come back to that. And he pursued after the children of Israel, and the children of Israel went out with a high hand. But the Egyptians pursued after them, all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them encamping by the sea beside Pi-hahiroth before Baal-zephon. So we read that word, those phrases, those names. English. It's hard. Before. But we see a couple of things in this story about unmovable hearts. Right? We've seen a couple of unmovable hearts in just these few verses we've read so far. Right? So we see, first of all, is the unmovable heart of Pharaoh. And that's the biggest part of this, is in Pharaoh, because the same stubbornness we've seen in these plagues we see here again. Pharaoh's heart is hard. He's stubborn. He refuses to admit the truth. The truth has to be according to his point of view. But notice this phrase, way down here in verse 8, where it says, the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh. That God caused Pharaoh to change his mind, that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Why on earth, let me ask you this question, why on earth would God do that? You think about everything that's about to transpire. These people with no horses of their own, we're talking about an entire nation traveling from one country to another. An entire nation, literally millions of people traveling like that all together. They don't have any way of moving quickly. And yet Pharaoh has summoned an army of chariots to quickly catch up to them, to destroy them. Because he so hates what's happened and hates himself and he hates them, and he's just so full of hate in this moment. He wants to destroy everything in his path. If we were there, we would be mad at God for this. There would be people that would be having conversations with other people that would say there's no excuse for this. There is no good that can come out of this. There would be people that would say, no matter what good does come out of this, it does not excuse the fact that God allowed this evil to happen in the first place. You know how I know that's what would happen? Because it's what happens today. You talk to somebody who's chosen not to believe in God, most of the time, what they're going to say is, how can there be a God when World War II happened? You know, how can there be a God when concentration camps were a thing? How can there be a God? I heard one man talk about this insect, I think it was, or a disease of some kind that gets into the eyes of certain children and can eat away at their eyes and cause blindness and incredible pain. And he says, how can there be a God when the world has such awful, terrible evil in it such as that? How can this be the world that God created? Right? So we use God, as we were talking about scapegoats earlier. God is a lot of people's scapegoat. They're mad about all the pain and suffering and turmoil that's gone on in the world. They don't have anybody to blame for it, so they blame God. Well, that's funny to me, because I thought they didn't believe in God. But besides all that, the fact that there's evil in the world does not dismiss the concept of God. Evil doesn't come from God, it comes from us. You want to look at why the world is the way that it is? Go read the story for yourself. It didn't come from God, it came from us. And the poor decisions that we make. We made the world this way. It didn't start off this way. And they would look at this story and say the same thing. How can God, making Pharaoh summon his chariots and attack Israel, how can that be of the Lord? How can God have actually done that? That's horrible. No, it's not. If God had never hardened Pharaoh's heart, then we would not have the story of the Red Sea. And this is the lesson we learn from this story. God places obstacles in our lives. Sometimes they're unfortunate events, sometimes they're people, but God places obstacles in our lives. And if there hadn't been a hardening of Pharaoh's heart, then nothing miraculous could have happened as a result. I want to remind everybody about a really difficult time in a lot of people's lives just a few years ago when the coronavirus was really big. and how awful that was all over the world and how scary it was. And people did actually die from the coronavirus, and it was tragic and it was awful. But if you look at the planet, we learned something about the resiliency of planet Earth in that moment. The pollution that they said was such a problem, that they will still tell you is a problem, that is so irreversible that it would take, hundreds of years to undo the pollution we've done to the atmosphere and to the seas and all of these things. When we stopped going out collectively as a species for that period of time, the skies and the waters cleared up. And that's something nobody talks about because it's uncomfortable for people who do believe in those things. Because the earth was able to heal itself. They had, I forget which major cities' waterways, like right next to the city.
It was Paris. Is it the Siena?
Oh, the Thames in Paris?
Yeah, it was where dolphins were swimming.
And they had dolphins swimming up into the city. That it had so cleared up and it wasn't just there. It was other places, like a couple places in America too, that they had these sea creatures swimming up into these canals and stuff into the city. It was incredible to see how the world was able to heal itself while we sort of stepped out of the way. We would have never learned that. We would have never seen that or experienced any of that if it had not been for that tragedy. And going from a global to a personal, there are tragedies in our lives that have led us to the place we are in life that we hold more valuable than anything else. And if it had not been for those tragedies, you think about it. Those tragedies made you make a decision that took you from where you were to where you are, had you meet the people that are in your life, and had you experienced the things that you've experienced that you hold so dear. And if it had not been for those tragedies, you would not have the things you hold most dear in your life. I want you to think about this as well. Think about the story of Moses' life for a third example. Moses chose to stand strong with God's people. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. He stood strong with God's people, choosing to suffer the affliction of God's people than endure the pleasures of sin for a season. And was, for his troubles, chased out of Egypt for, to his knowledge, the rest of his life. That was the reward for his loyalty to the Lord and to his people. That must have been an incredibly hard thing to learn to live with. But if it had not been for Moses being chased out of Egypt, he would have never seen the burning bush. If he had not been living all that time in the backside of that desert, he would not have been in the right place at the right time to see that burning bush. Before Moses could learn how to lead God's people, he had to first learn how to lead some sheep on the backside of the desert. Because that is how God leads his people. God calls shepherds. He called Moses. He called David. God calls shepherds. That's what Abraham and all of his descendants were in the book of Genesis. They tended to sheep. You look at the stories of Jacob when he was with his father-in-law. They were tending to sheep. That's what they did for a living. They grew things out of the ground and they tended to sheep. And if Moses hadn't have been chased out of Egypt, he would have never seen that burning bush, would have never been called by God to go and set those people free. Our tragedies can be used by God and are often used by God to bring us to incredible things and incredible places in our lives. So don't run from them. Don't try to make them disappear out of your mind. Don't try to make it as though it never happened. Embrace those things because God used those things and continues to use them to try to get you to the place he wants you to be. And the more you resist those hardships in your life, the longer it's going to take for God to shape you into the person he wants you to become. And we see all of this from the immovable heart of Pharaoh. The immovable heart of Pharaoh was the unfortunate thing that was happening in their life. But we also see, in response to that hardship, the unmovable heart of Moses. Folks, Moses had just heard that God was going to send the most powerful army on earth to capture and destroy Israel. But he never questions God, and he never shows any doubt. Moses' knowledge of the wisdom and power of God helps him to have faith in God when he needs it most. Moses is not tossed back and forth between faith and doubt with every changing moment. He's solid. He's unmoving. He is continuing to trust the Lord. And that is what we are called upon. They were stuck between an ocean and the most powerful army in the world. And sometimes we're stuck between a rock and a hard place ourselves. Sometimes we're stuck between here and there, and we have no idea what we're going to do. I've had days a bill comes up due, and it is so much more than I thought it should be. And we look into it. What happened? Why is it like that? They're not sure, but that's the way the meter read. So that's what it's going to be. And I was in despair. I did not know what I was going to do. And I am trying like crazy to figure it out. And let me tell you something. When you find yourself in that place between the rock and the hard place, you have got to stay strong in the Lord, because He will send a way to take care of you. Recently, my grandmother found out that the bottom of her house had been flooding for like a month. Really bad. Had no idea. She got an incredulous bill in the mail. An ungodly amount of money. I'm not going to say online how much it was, but she did not know what she was going to do, how she was going to pay for it, or even how she was going to fix the leak. And the Lord provided for her. God can use all kinds of people. He used the Babylonians to perform His will on His own children. God can use all kinds of people. It does not make those people good people, necessarily. But it doesn't mean that God can't still use them. So what does this teach us? James 1:6 says, let him ask in faith. Who's him? Him is us. Nothing wavering. Right? That's the phrase, nothing wavering. Because the rest of it says, he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. You know what waves do? When the wind blows this direction, they go that direction. And the wind comes back the opposite direction, they come back the opposite direction. They go left, they go right, they go all over the place, tossed back and forth. Verse 7 of James 1 says, for let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. You cannot keep going back and forth. You have got to stay strong in the Lord if you want the Lord. Moses had an unmovable heart. He was with God. He's going to trust God no matter what. We have got to have unmovable hearts if we're going to start seeing victories in the Christian life. We see unmovable hearts. We also see a movable people in verse 10. Let me pull up here. Says, when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marching after them. And they were sore afraid. I would be too, man. The children of Israel cried out unto the Lord, and they said to Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, thou hast taken us away to die in the wilderness? Therefore thou hast dealt with us to carry us forth out of Egypt. Or wherefore hast thou dealt with us to carry us forth out of Egypt? Why have you done this? What, because there weren't enough rooms to bury us in Egypt? You took us all the way out here so that we can die here? They're panicked. They're panicking. We've had moments like this. We're panicked and we're disparaged. They said in verse 12, is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than we should die in the wilderness. We would rather die as slaves than live as free men, is what they're saying here. But they just wanted to live. They were scared. And God understood this, and Moses understood this. And in verse 13, Moses said unto the people, fear ye not. It's easier said than done. But only because we forget who the Lord is. I want you to think about that thing in your life right now that puts a knot in your stomach. I want you to, for just a minute, take a moment and think about that thing. And remember that the reason that thing puts a knot in your stomach is because you've forgotten who the Lord is. You'd say, yeah, but I don't know what's going to happen. That's true, but the Lord does. And who are you? He doesn't need your approval over his plan. It's his plan. And when the problem arises, his solution will arise with it. He is our King. He is our Lord. He has the answer. You've just got to trust him that he's going to give it to you. He's never let you down. He's never going to. Life may take some unexpected turns we weren't expecting, but God is always going to take care of you. He says, fear ye not. Remember the Lord and remember who he is. Remember those 10 plagues. Remember what you've seen him do already. Remember the Passover lamb and remember the death angel. And fear ye not, because when I see the blood, I will pass over you. Fear ye not. Stand still. He didn't say go grab some buckets. He didn't say you dig this trench across the Red Sea halfway and God will do the other half. He said you just stand there and watch God do the work. Folks, God doesn't want to meet you halfway. He wants you to see what he is capable of. You stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. God doesn't want to meet you halfway with salvation. He doesn't want to meet you halfway to heaven. He doesn't want to meet you halfway anywhere. He wants to bring you where he is. Stand still and watch God do his work. He will show you. He will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom you've seen today, you shall see again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. To hold your peace means to be quiet. He said you're going to see God fight on your behalf. You're not going to lift a finger, and you will finally shut up about, oh, God sent us out here to kill us. You will give up on your despair. And this will be a day you'll go back to for the rest of your lives. Does that mean they were no longer discouraged ever again? No. Does that mean that they didn't get afraid ever again? Unfortunately, no, it did not. But you have some Red Sea moments in your life. You have some days you can go back to and remember how God showed up for you. And you can go back to those moments. You say, I don't. Pastor, I don't have any moments like that. I don't have any cool stories that I can go back to. You do. You just don't remember them. You have forgotten what the Lord has done for you. And I would encourage you to go back and think hard on all the moments of your life and remember what he's done for you. The Lord said unto Moses, wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak thou to the children of Israel that they go forward. But lift thou up thy rod, and stretch out thy hand over the sea, and divide it. And the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. And behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. And I will get me honor upon Pharaoh, and upon all his host, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I have gotten me honor upon Pharaoh, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. So we see a weakened and weary Israel finding themselves in a terrifying situation. But they get a boost in encouragement from the Lord. Moses tells Israel that God will bring salvation to them. Ephesians 2 verse 8 and 9 says, for by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. Our salvation is not something we work for. It's not something we earn. It's not something that we have a right to. It would say, Pastor, you have any idea what that would mean? If people can just go to God and say, I'm sorry, please save me, then heaven could be filled with all kinds of lowlifes and degenerates and evil people. Yeah, but it's not something you say with your lips, folks. Salvation doesn't come from the lips. Faith doesn't come from the lips. Salvation comes from the Lord, and faith comes from the heart. And it's not about saying the right words. It's about really, truly believing in your heart. You can say whatever you want to. If you don't mean it, you think you're going to catch God off guard on a technicality? No. We believe in God by grace through faith. That takes place in here. Not here and not here. That takes place here. In an unexplainable place. Scientists try to explain loving feelings and emotions to us, that our brains run off of chemicals. And the right combination of memories and smells of good memories and phrases and words and sounds combine in our minds to release the right kind of chemicals to make us feel this feeling of love. And that it is in fact very scientific until you felt it. And let me tell you something, if you've ever felt real love, there is nothing more unexplainable in all the world. When you find that person you love that you want to spend the rest of your life with, man, that's not just a chemical. I'm sure it is, but there's so much more to it than that. You hold that baby in your arms for the very first time, and you tell me that that's just your brain shooting chemicals around trying to convince you of something. No, man, there's so much more to that. There's something unexplainable to that. There's a deeper, more powerful love to that. And it's an incredible thing. It has nothing to do with what goes on up here. It's in here. There's a feeling, there's a burning, there's an emotion, there's a sensation in here that doesn't take place in here. And it's an incredible thing. We see God encourage Moses as a leader. That Moses goes to God and prays to him because the people are panicking and they've come to him and they're worried and he's told them, stand still, see the salvation of the Lord and all these things, but it doesn't seem to be helping them. So that he goes to God and prays, and God basically says, what are you doing? I told you what to do. Lift up the stick. I will part the waters and you guys will move on safely. Why did you stop? I told you what to do next. It was working. Sometimes we can feel like when we do what we do, it doesn't really matter. You ever had a day like that? You ever had a day where you felt like you can get up, you can get yourself ready, go to wherever it is that you go, you can do the work that you do, whatever it is that you do, that you can try to be an encouragement to people, that you can try to be nice to people, that the people in your life you can try to help, that the people you meet in your life you can try to help and be an encouragement to, and try to even give the gospel maybe to, or hand out a gospel tract, and whatever it is that you can do for people. But at the end of the day, it just seems like you're just spinning your wheels in the mud. That you're not actually accomplishing anything. Moses is standing here, knowing everything that he knows, a wise man, a godly man, and yet he's looking at an ocean, an impassable sea, and he's looking at the dust cloud of the strongest army in the world charging toward him. And he sees 1 million people afraid for their own lives. And I'm sure that this is why he went to God in prayer, which is so wise. That he has a moment where he feels like, am I doing it right? I know God told me to do this, and this is so in character with Moses because we saw him at the burning bush. And God comes to Moses, he says, you've got a big job, you've got a big future ahead of you, you've got some real glory about you. And any egomaniac in the world would have said, yeah, that sounds right to me. About time, I've been waiting for that. But not Moses. Moses would say, are you talking to somebody else? There's no way you mean me. I can't do a job like that. I'm just little Moses. There's no way. Nobody cares about what I have to say. Right? And God spends so long trying to convince him of this. It's in perfect keeping with Moses' character for him to get to this point and say, did I mess up somewhere? Did I say it wrong? Did I do it wrong? Did I fail these people? What did I do wrong? And go back to God and say, God, what did I do wrong? And God say, you didn't do anything wrong. It was about to happen. Just pick the stick up. sometimes we can feel that way, right? And when we feel that way, there's nothing more encouraging than to know something that you said or something that you did for someone else helped them. And I want you to think of this not from the position of a person trying to be a help, but I want you to think of this as a position of somebody who has been helped. You have that person in your life that is trying to help you succeed, that is trying to help you grow, that is trying to help you accomplish your goals in life. And how often do you tell that person, you have made a difference? If for nobody else, for me. And I want to say thank you. That little phrase right there would mean the world to somebody. You know how I know? Because imagine if somebody said that to you. Imagine if somebody came up to you tomorrow, as somebody you've been trying to help but you don't know how, or somebody you've been trying to work with and it just doesn't seem like you're making any difference, and that person comes up to you and says, you know, you've been a real help to me and I just want to say thank you. That would mean the world to you, and it means the world to other people as well. And we have got to learn not just to look for blessings. We've got to learn to be a blessing. So go to that person tomorrow and tell them that and say, thank you. Thank you so much for all that you do for me. What you do matters. And it's helped me so much. And I just want to say thank you. That'll mean the world to somebody. You might keep somebody from giving up just by saying that one little thing. And God encourages Moses here as a leader. He says, you were doing good. Just turn around and keep doing it. That's encouraging to those of us who say, man, how did I mess this up? Why is it not working? And him to say, it's working. Just be patient. Just wait. As a pastor, I say that all the time. I say, man, where did I miss the boat? How did I mess this up? Why is it not turned out the way I thought it was going to? What happened? I can't tell you how many times God has had to send me that message to say, you haven't messed anything up. Just keep doing what I've told you to do. You're doing good. Just hang in there. Just keep doing the good work. Because when we work for the Lord, that is the good work. And it's encouraging. Go encourage somebody tomorrow. And we see lastly, you can't leave the last bit of the story out, the movable waters. We see some movable waters. Verse 19 says, the angel of God, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them, and the pillar of the cloud went before their face and stood behind them. Why? Because they were leading. This pillar of a cloud was leading them, and it led them to the Red Sea, and now it stands between Israel and Pharaoh. You imagine how much time it takes 1 million people to cross an entire sea? This pillar was blocking Pharaoh from reaching and destroying Israel. It came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, right there, verse 20. And it was a cloud of, and darkness to them, but it gave light by night to these, so that the one came not near to the other all the night. However long they needed to cross the Red Sea, God had built a barrier between Egypt and Israel. And in verse 21, it says that Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And we know the rest of this story. Pharaoh, he tries to cross the Red Sea after Israel has crossed it. And as they get halfway across, those waters, they begin to come crushing back down and killing and destroying and crushing Pharaoh and his warriors. God dropped an ocean on his head. Whose God is mightier? He said that he did this so that all Egypt may know that I am the capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, Lord. He is Jehovah, and there is only one. Moses stretched a hand out, but it was God that parted the waters. Remember that. 1 Corinthians 3:6, Paul says, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. Can I encourage you today, don't concern yourself with results. Those results are oftentimes not up to you. The results are up to somebody else and the decision they're going to make. Don't concern yourself with them. What you need to do is concern yourself with how good a job you're doing at what you're trying to do. I got to ask myself all the time, am I the best pastor I could be? And how can I do better? At the end of the day, only God can give the increase, and that increase will only come in the right time. So just because I don't see an increase doesn't mean I'm doing something wrong. That I have to wait for God to decide it's harvest season. And maybe it's not harvest season yet. But that doesn't mean that you're not watering well enough. It means that you just got to wait on God to give you a harvest. And that may take a while, but you know what? It's well worth it. When that time comes, you'll be glad that you did. Just keep watering, keep planting, and just wait for God to let that crop grow. God does the work. At the Red Sea, it was Moses' hand that was raised, but it was God that parted the waters. And in our lives, we go out and we do the work. But that work won't matter for a hill of beans until God's ready to make it grow. Well, that's our lesson for this evening. Let me double check both of our services. I do have the chat up, but I want to make sure there are no prayer requests that I missed. Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate that. Thank you, Sylvia, for the encouragement. I appreciate that as well. And everybody else watching, both now and in the future. And that is, like I said, our lesson. I want to thank you guys so much for being here and watching. Be sure to click that like, as that does help us out, and it helps other people see this Bible study as well. And we'll be back on Sunday morning for our Sunday school series on finding fruit in the fables of faith. So until